afternoon. It's good to be back home at the home congregation and to see all these faces that I grew up seeing that have influenced my life. Now, they gave me a time limit, and the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, so I couldn't be a little bit long-winded. So we're going to get on to it. I thought I was good because they put me before Ernest, and I said, well, he won't show me up too bad if I go before him. And then they put me right after everybody ate, so I said, well, I don't know if that was a good thing or not. So I'm going to try to keep you awake, and we're going to go into dive into this subject this afternoon. Turn to Acts chapter 2. Acts chapter 2. Verse number 41. While y'all turn there, Brother Fulton, I have somebody else who's going to help me do something in a few minutes, but I'm going to volunteer you since you're sitting up front there. So I'll let you know when I need you. Acts chapter 2, starting verse 41, it says, Then they that gladly received this word were baptized. And the same day there were added unto them about 3,000 souls. And they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship, and in breaking of bread and in prayers. And fear came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were done by the apostles. And all that believed were together and had all things common, and sold their possessions and goods, and parted them to all men, as every man had need. And they, continuing daily with one accord in the temple, and breaking bread from house to house, did eat their meat with gladness and singleness of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to the church daily such as should be saved. This afternoon, my subject that I've been given is the value of fellowship. The value of fellowship. Now, I need you guys to kind of participate a little bit, so I might ask you to raise your hands, because you guys don't get sleepy on me because all the food that you ate, so I want everybody to stay awake. How many of you guys have been to Sam's Club? Okay, we've been to Sam's Club, right? And as a child going to Sam's Club, it was this big thing. Couldn't everybody go into Sam's Club? Matter of fact, when you go to the front door, they don't do this now, but before, if you didn't have a membership card, they didn't even let you in the front door. They were sitting up there with a checklist. As soon as you came in, if you didn't have a membership, you had to go straight to the desk and get one. Nowadays, they let you in, but you still can't check out unless you have a membership card. So only members are allowed in Sam's Club. But there are benefits to being a member of Sam's Club. When you go in there, you find things that you could not find anywhere else. You can go to Walmart, you can go to Bilo, we got Piggly Wiggly over here, and you still be things that you cannot find those stores there at Sam's. They have everything from diapers and groceries, power washers, and sometimes you can even find you a boat at Sam's Club. Okay? It's a one-stop shop. But there are benefits to being a member of Sam's Club. But here's the catch. Being a member of Sam's Club isn't free. There's a cost associated with it. And to find the value in something, you have to take the benefits of it and take the cost, put them together, and figure out what the value of that thing is. So this morning, I'm going to try to do three things for you. I want to talk about what is fellowship. We're going to look at the benefits and the responsibilities of fellowship. And we're going to look at the value of fellowship. And we're going to use Sam's Club as a reference to fellowship. See, just like Sam's Club has a membership card, we have a fellowship card. And there are certain things about that fellowship that must be known. So let's look at the word fellowship. In Acts chapter 2, verse 42, it says, And they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship and breaking of bread and in prayers. Now that word fellowship, if we look at the Greek, is koinonia, which means partnership, participation, a gift jointly contributed. Partnership, participation, a gift jointly contributed. Now, when we look at the word, the first thing that stands out is that fellowship is an action word. It's something that you must actively do. You can't just say, well, I'm in fellowship. Never show up to anything. It's something that you actively have to do. Is participation. Now, in a partnership, I hope your partnerships are 50-50. Because fellowship is 50-50. It's a 50-50 relationship. It's not all give and no take. And it's not all take and no give. And as we go further into this lesson, you're going to see that with this 50-50 relationship, all of it is not always sunny and sunshine, but it's 50-50. You give and you take. And also we see with fellowship is not singular. It's not an individual thing. It's a group effort. Now, to really understand what fellowship is, we must understand who is in fellowship. Who is allowed to have this fellowship card? If we go look into Acts chapter 2, it's going to tell us all the answers that we need for today. But in order to understand who is in fellowship, we need context. So if we go to Acts chapter 2, verse 41, I want you to either underline this, write this down, place this in your memory, whatever you need to do to make sure you understand this. I want you to highlight a few things. In verse 41 it says, then they that, here's the part, gladly received his word were baptized. And the same day there were added unto them about 3,000 souls, and they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship and breaking of bread and in prayers. Now, drop down to verse number 44. Highlight this part. And all that believed were together and had all things common. From these verses, what we can understand is in order for you to have this membership card, you have to be a believer. And we see in verse 41, those believers were baptized. And we see verse 44 that they believed and were together. And here's the thing I really want you to highlight out of this because it can be a misconception. Had all things common. Now, I want y'all to keep that in mind because what we're going to talk about next is going to highlight that all things common, because this is an issue that hinders fellowship because sometimes we don't understand had all things common. Now, to understand another quality of these people that are in fellowship, we need to go to the beginning of Acts chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. I'm going to paraphrase verses 1 through 4 for you, and we're going to pick up in verse 5. Acts chapter 2, starting with verse 1. Now what's going on here is the day of Pentecost. And there was a sound of a rushing mighty wind that filled the house, and we remember that. And the apostles began to speak in tongues. And verse 5 picks up and says, and there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, underline this part, devout men out of every nation under heaven. Now when this was noised abroad, the multitude came together and were confounded because, this part, that every man heard them speak in his own language. And they were all amazed and marveled, saying one to another, behold, are not these who speak Galileans? And how hear we every man in our own tongue wherein we were born? Parthians, Medes, Elamites, dwellers of Mesopotamia and Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus, Asia, Phrygia, Pamphylia, and Egypt, and parts of Libya, Cyrene, and strangers of Rome, Jews, proselytes, Cretes, and Arabians, we do hear them speak in our tongues the wonderful works of God. And they were all amazed, and were in doubt, saying one to another, what meaneth this? I want to let everyone in here understand this, if you don't take anything else from this message, that those who are in fellowship are a diverse group of people. Fellowship is not limited by cultural differences. If you look here, there were people from every nation under heaven. They spoke different languages. No doubt they dressed different. Someone from Egypt was not dressing the same as someone from Rome or someone from Jerusalem. They all had differences that made them unique. Yet, Verse 44 said they had all things common. That all things common are all spiritual things. We might have a lot of differences, but those differences should not put a strain or a limit on our fellowship. And not only that, probably the most important thing is that fellowship is not limited by personal or congregal preferences as long as it does not contradict the Word of God. Let me say it again. Fellowship is not limited by personal or congregal preference as long as it is not contrary to the Word of God. So what do you mean? Whether someone sings old songs or whether this congregation sings new songs, whether we take communion before the lesson or whether you take communion after the lesson, whether someone stands up to ask for prayer or you pass around the card, or whether they come up to the front to ask for prayer, whether they pass around unleavened bread that you have to break or if it's already pre-cut. These things, your preference, you might like to break the bread yourself, but that doesn't have anything to do with your fellowship with the congregation that does otherwise. Now, some say, well, you just kind of made that up. Go ahead to Romans chapter 14. Turn to Romans chapter 14. We're going to look at verses 1 through 6. Give you a few seconds to get there. So I'm doing good on time. And verse 1 says, "Him that is weak in the faith receive ye, but not to doubtful disputations." Now, when y'all first looked at that, be honest, how many of y'all understood what that last part of the verse said? I didn't. All right, so I had to look it up, and I had to go and I looked at a different translation for a little bit more clarity. So I looked at the New American Standard Version, and it says, "Now accept the one who is weak in faith, but not for the purpose of passing judgment on his opinions." Our opinions really don't matter. Some women like to wear hats when they come to service. Some of them don't. If you like your hat, wear your hat. If you don't like hats, don't wear a hat. Don't be mad at the person that does wear a hat. And those things should not stop your fellowship. Now, we're going to talk about something else that might step on some toes, make some people feel uncomfortable. But if it's in the book, we have to accept it, right? All right. Let's keep reading then. Verse number 2. "One person has faith that he may eat all things, but he who is weak eats vegetables only. The one who eats is not to regard with contempt the one who does not eat, and the one who does not eat is not to judge the one who eats, for God has accepted him." So which way you do it, it doesn't matter. And you can't get mad at this person because he don't do it the way you like it. And he can't get mad at you because you don't do it the way they like it. We had a meal a few minutes ago. Now, they had some turkey up there. I don't like dark meat. I like white meat. Can I just look at them? I can't believe you mixed that turkey up in there. Our preferences don't matter as long as it's not contrary. Now, let's keep looking at this because this is when it kind of starts to get deeper. "Who are you to judge the servant of another? To his own master he stands or falls, and he will stand, for the Lord is able to make him stand." Listen to this part. "One person regards one day above another. Another regards every day alike. Each person must be fully convinced in his own mind. He who observes the day observes it for the Lord, and he who eats does so for the Lord, for he gives thanks to God. And he who eats not for the Lord, he does not eat, and gives thanks to God." Listen, guys, let's not make issues out of things that don't matter. If it's not essential, leave it alone. Fellowship. Sometimes congregations cannot fellowship with one another because of something that doesn't amount to a hill of beans. And sometimes in the church, in one congregation, I can't fellowship with somebody else because he likes something different from us. The Bible said that that the body's made out of many different members, and everybody has their own role, right? So that means everybody is different. Just like we saw that there were men out of every nation under heaven at the day of Pentecost. They could not have all been the same. Some people probably had never had some of the foods that they had. But we noticed that they continued on and they were eating their meat in gladness. That brings us to the next point. In order to get this card, this fellowship card, you're going to have to be selfless. In verse 45 of Acts chapter 2, it says, and sold their possessions and goods and parted them to all men, as every man had need. And they continued daily with one accord in the temple, and breaking bread from house to house, did eat their meat with gladness and singleness of heart. Now, it's one thing for us to give up some time to fellowship. But here we saw that people gave up of their money, of their finances. Now that's something a little bit harder for us to grasp and to swallow when we have to give up of our finances for fellowship. Now, not only did they do that for financially, but they said they continued daily with one accord in the temple and breaking bread from house to house. I want you to look at the locations where they were at. They fellowship in the place of worship. And they fellowship from house to house. Sometimes it's pulling teeth to get us to come back to the building on any day outside of Sunday for us to fellowship. This is the first Sunday fellowship this morning, a lectureship. How many congregations in the first Sunday fellowship? At least 8 more. 11. How hard is it to get people to come on the bus to come with you to the first Sunday fellowship? Because our ideal of fellowship is not right. Because we live in a time and age where we isolate ourselves and we feel like it's all about me. But in order for you to get this card, it ain't all about you. I would wish someone would go in the Sam's Club without a card and say, I'm going to go up there anyway, and they can get everything you want in your bag, in your boogie, and you get to that line, and guess what? The first thing they ask you to do is scan your Sam's card. And if you ain't got one, you can't scan nothing. So you can have all those groceries with you. You can't scan. That's the same thing with fellowship. Listen, it's not about your weight. It's not about the individual. It's a partnership. It's a gift jointly contributed. It's a 50-50 relationship. Now, many congregations try to facilitate this fellowship. And ways they facilitate it are men's days, ladies' days, youth rallies, church picnics, food giveaways, Bible goals, participating on a church committee or ministry. All these things are done to help bring you together, to help facilitate and make it easier for you to fellowship. The first Sunday fellowship is made to make it easier for you to fellowship. But here's the problem. Remember I told you you have to find the value in order for you to understand what fellowship is for you? Sometimes we don't understand what the benefits of fellowship are. Now, in order to understand the benefits, you got to understand the first thing that happens when you go to Sam's is you're going to sign a contract and pay your money to get this card. And that contract is telling you that Brother Johnny and Brother King, y'all equal when y'all come in here. He's not going to get benefits that you're not, and you can't just run out of here without paying, and he has to pay. Okay? It says that everybody is on the same page. Turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 1. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, and then we're going to look at Ephesians chapter 4 as well. So if you want to bookmark both of them. We got to look at this contract, making sure that we're on the same page. 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and verse 10 says, Now I beseech you, brethren, by the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that ye all speak the same thing, and that there be no divisions among you, but that ye be perfectly joined together in the same mind, in the same judgment. We need to be on the same page and understand that we're signing this contract together. Now, go to Ephesians chapter 4. in verse 1 through 5. Ephesians 4, 1 through 5. And it says, I therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that you walk worthy of the vocation wherewith you were called, with all lowliness and meekness, with long suffering, forbearing one another in love, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, even as you are called in one hope of your calling, one Lord, one faith, and one baptism. There is one contract for fellowship. You can't have it your way. It's not different. And you have to be on the same page. Once you get on the same page and you have this card, then we look at the benefits and the responsibilities of fellowship. Now I'm going to move around a little bit on you for this. Can y'all still hear me? Yeah. All right. I'll just talk a little bit loud. I don't think this thing is working. Go ahead and turn to Galatians chapter 6. Yep. Go ahead and return to Galatians chapter 6. And we're going to look at verse 2. And I'm going to read it to you, but I want y'all to stay on that because I really want you to understand it. Galatians chapter 6, verse 2. And it says, bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. Bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. I don't think that's working. Sorry. Now, I want to show you a physical representation of fellowship. What I have here is a bag, and this bag has about 60 pounds in it. Okay? Now, this is life as a Christian without fellowship. And you're holding on to this bag, and over time, what's going to happen? I can hold it up here at first, but over time, my hands are going to start wearing down, right? Because these burdens that I'm carrying, they're going to be wearing me down. They're getting heavy. There's a song called All My Trials, and one of the verses that's in that song, it says, burden low, full of care, sorrows weigh my shoulders down and fill me with despair. See, when you were trying to carry these burdens by yourself, you got to figure out how you're going to carry it. Is it more comfortable for me to hold it like this on my shoulder? I can't really figure it out. Now, all this time, while I'm holding it by myself, I'm getting a little bit weak, and my arms are starting to fall down. So I have to figure out how I'm going to bear this. And this is what happens. If you try to bear your burdens by yourself with no rest in it, you're going to fail. When you lift weights, if you don't ever get rest, you're going to burn out and fail. Now come up here. Come up here for me. So cool. Now I'm going to show you what fellowship does. I want you to hold on to this handle right here for me. And you hold on to that. Now this was 60 pounds. Now I'm holding 20. He's holding 20. And he's holding 20. Now, here's the thing about fellowship. I'm benefiting from fellowship because they're helping me bear my burdens. But they have a responsibility because they have to then lift my burdens up. They're not theirs. All right? Now, even more about that, sometimes in bearing one another's burdens, we have to peel back the scabs of our life. Because I might have been married for 4 years, and I might be having marital problems. But Brother Johnny's been married for 20 years, and he knows the struggles that I'm having. So as a Christian and fellowship, it's his responsibility to help me with that. But that might be painful for Brother Johnny, because I don't know what struggles he had to have and overcome that he's put behind him that now he has to help me because so now this fellowship is taking a burden off of me. Y'all hold on to that. Let me give you one more point, all right? Now, one of the biggest things, y'all go ahead and turn to Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12 and verse 15. And it says, rejoice with them that do rejoice, and weep with them that weep. Listen, we have to learn to celebrate and uplift those of us that we're in fellowship with. Because watch this. So I was holding this 60 pounds, right? Now I'm holding 20.
and they've taken some of that burden off of me because we dispersed this weight. Now, I'm not under that pressure anymore, and I can go do things, and I start achieving things. So as I start doing good, Brother Fulton here, he's encouraging me. Man, you did good. He's celebrating with me. People thrive off acknowledgement and praise. It's a difference between celebrating and praising someone and worshiping someone. It's okay to praise someone and celebrate with them. So watch what happens. When he starts to celebrate with me, I can take some of this weight out. I can take this weight out, and now I can carry this by myself. Y'all can go ahead and sit down. Thank you. Now, I can carry this by myself because they've been celebrating with me. They've been uplifting me. I don't feel like I'm doing this on my own. Now, it took him to take out his time. He had to come from his seat or from his home to help me bear my burdens. And he had to come to help me celebrate. So it's a responsibility for him, but it's also a benefit because when Brother Fulton needs me, I'm right there. When Brother Bonaparte needs me, I'm right there. If you try to carry that bag by yourself, your arms are just going to keep going down. You can't do it. We need people to bear our burdens. And we need to be ready to step up to help people bear their burdens. Amen. If I've been through it, it's my responsibility to help the next person through. That's why the Bible tells us the older men to help the younger men. And the older women to help the younger women because you've been through it before. You've been through it before, so it's our responsibility to help one another. Let me get on back up here before I run out of time. All right. Now, two more things really, and it's going to be yours. So we talked about celebrating with one another and bearing each other's burdens. In Galatians, go back to Galatians chapter 6 and verse 1. Galatians 6 and verse 1. It says, Brethren, if a man be overtaken in a fault, ye which are spiritual, restore such an one in the spirit of meekness, considering thyself, lest thou also be tempted. It's our responsibility, and it's a benefit, to restore one another. Y'all watch this now. It is a benefit to be restored. And it's a responsibility for me to restore another. But it's also a responsibility for me to take that restoring. All right? It's not fun when somebody comes and calls you and says, Brother, we ain't seen you in a while. Where you been? Hey, I know you did this over here and that wasn't right. We need to talk about this. We have to be meek enough on our end to take it. And the person who's restoring us needs to be meek enough when bringing it to us that we're able to accept it. If I come over to you and say, no, you're wrong. 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to accept it, right? But if you come to me the right way, then I'll be able to accept what you're bringing to me and be able to be restored. Now, this is going to be probably the hardest one. Colossians chapter 3. Colossians chapter 3. And then, if you want to mark Matthew chapter 18, we'll go straight to that. Colossians chapter 3, verse 13 says, Forbearing one another and forgiving one another. If any man have a quarrel against any, even as Christ forgave you, so also do ye. Listen, we got to forgive one another when we do wrong. Nobody's perfect. That's the thing about fellowship. A lot of times people don't fellowship or don't want to participate because they think that fellowship is supposed to be perfect. That people in the fellowship, the people that you're fellowshipping with, are supposed to be perfect. But we're human beings, nobody's perfect. There are going to be issues. Somebody's going to step on your toes. Somebody's going to make you upset. We need to be able to forgive one another. But maybe the biggest thing, Matthew chapter 18, verse 15. Matthew 18:15 says, Moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, go and tell him his fault between thee and him alone. Now watch this part. If he shall hear thee, thou hast gained thy brother. I want to look at this part. If he shall hear thee. Listen, here's this benefit and responsibility again. To be forgiven is a benefit. To accept and acknowledge that you have done wrong is the responsibility. Listen, this is where we mess up in marriages. All right. When we did something wrong, what we usually say when we apologize? I'm sorry if I made you feel a certain type of way. And women hate that. All right? They want you to acknowledge and take responsibility of whatever it is that you made them feel. So don't say, I'm sorry if I made you, if what I said made you feel a certain type of way. They want you to say, I'm sorry that I did this. I'm sorry that I lost your trust. That's the same thing in the church with fellowship. Nobody wants to hear you say, well, if you thought what I was saying was, nobody wants to hear it. What they want to hear is that I'm sorry. I did it. I was wrong. I can admit that I was wrong. Will you forgive me? But sometimes there can be something that someone's been holding for 15 years that somebody did that you don't even know that you did. And they might try to throw a hint at you, but you don't know. Tell people their faults. And then you be able to be man enough or woman enough to acknowledge that you did wrong and try to make it right. So we've gone over what fellowship is and who's in fellowship and the benefits and the responsibilities of fellowship. The last thing that we need to talk about is the value of fellowship, because we know it's a cost for this card, right? 2 minutes. All right, we got it. There's a cost for this card. All right? It doesn't come free. Now, we're commanded and given examples of fellowship. Now, if you look at Hebrews chapter 3, verse 12 and 13, it tells us to exhort one another daily. And 1 Thessalonians 5, 11 and through 15, it tells us that we should labor amongst one another and admonish one another and edify one another. And let's look at this last one, Acts chapter 2, verse 46 and 47 to end it off. And they, continuing daily with one accord in the temple, and breaking bread from house to house, did eat their meat with gladness and singleness of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people. The Lord added to the church daily such as should be saved. Now listen, the value of fellowship. Value is something that you have to put on it. God has given us command to fellowship. We look at the benefits of fellowship and who all is included in fellowship and what fellowship is, but the value has to be determined by the individual. Is it worth it for you to fellowship? Is it worth paying that money for that card for you to get the benefits? Is it worth it to have someone to help you bear your burdens? To have someone to uplift and celebrate with you? Is that worth it to you? Is it of high enough value? I would hope that it was high enough value that money could not be placed on it. I would hope that fellowship was a high enough value that when you go home tonight, you say, you know what, I need to get more involved in the congregation. I need to get more involved in fellowship. The choice is yours, and the value that you put on fellowship is yours. I appreciate your attention and your time. I hope this helps someone in their everyday Christian walk. Amen.